Hello, this is Cherie with Rehashfiber, and welcome to Step 7 in the Learning to Knit lessons. If you would like to find all of the steps in all of the lessons, you can go to Rehashfiber, then go to the playlist, Beginners Learn to Knit Lessons, and there you will find everything from Step 1 through all the steps in continental style knitting. If you are interested and curious about anything else in the fiber world, I have done hundreds of videos. You can just check out the site and peruse whatever you are interested in. Last episode, I helped you get started on your first project. What I did not cover are some of the things that happen in every project, so I'm going to cover that today. That's going to be fixing mistakes, adding another ball of yarn, and then weaving in your ends at the end. So I want you to take a look right now on a couple of ways you can fix your mistakes. Suppose you've made a mistake and you need to take your work out. There's a couple of ways to do it. I'm going to show you how to take it out stitch by stitch right now. What you're going to do is you're going to take your right needle and you're going to go underneath and into this stitch, and you're going to slide the stitch off the needle and pull it with your right hand out. So you see now it is safe on your right needle. You're going to go behind and into the stitch below. Once you see it's on the needle and secure, you're going to push that off and pull it out. Now you can just hold this yarn and pick up the speed just a little bit. You're going to go to the stitch below, put it in from back to front. You're going to slide the top stitch off and pull the yarn. Go from behind. This is a good way to just make sure that all your stitches are secure and you're not losing anything. And that is how you take out stitches. Another way to take out stitches is to just pull your needles out and rip back. Now with this yarn, it's not too slippery. It's not going to just fall apart. There's some yarns, you know, when it's silky and you just rip it out, you're really going to have a hard time picking up your stitches again. This is going to be just fine. So say we're just going to pull back a couple of rows. We'll say a row and a half there. And now we've gone below our supposed mistake. And now you just need to get your needle back into the stitches so you can resume knitting. So you see what I'm doing is I'm going behind and in to the stitch so that they are laying correctly. Now sometimes when your stitches are loose and slippery, you're worried about them just falling out. You can just stick your needle in any which way to get it secure. And then later, as you're going through knitting, you can just make sure that it is laying the correct way. You'll get to knowing how the stitch is supposed to lay as you're knitting into it. So now they are back secure again, and there's an example. This one here looks strange, so I'm going to show you how we're going to fix it. Okay, so now that we have the needle back in all the stitches, I'm going to show you an example of a stitch that is not correct. I went ahead and set this up for us. All right, so this one is correct. We're going to knit into it. But you can see here, this one looks strange. It got picked up the wrong way. So what we're going to do is just make it the right way. I'm going to slide it to this right needle temporarily, then put it back on the left needle so that it is laying the correct way. And then we're going to knit into it. And that is how you rip back and then start again. I also had made an in-depth video on just that, so I am going to link that at the end of the show. All right, the other thing that happens is when you make a bigger project and you need more than one ball of yarn. So to add the next ball of yarn, I'm going to show you how to do that right here. If you should need to add a second ball of yarn, what you want to do is when your first ball of yarn is getting very low, you want to just make sure that you have enough to finish out a row, because you want to not be stuck in the middle having to add new yarn in the middle. So to do that, you want 3 times the amount of the length that you're working on. So make sure you have enough to finish your row. 1, and I'm a little generous as you see here. All right, so that should be enough to finish out your row and leave you a tail like so. Here in this, we're going to add another ball of yarn. You're going to leave your tail off to the side. You're going to take your new ball of yarn and you're going to hold the yarn with the tension as if you're getting ready to knit. We're going to hold the needles here. And I'm just going to knit straight across. I'm not going to follow this pattern I had done previously. We're going to knit and grab this yarn. It feels kind of funny because there's not a lot of tension there holding it. But there you see. We're just going to continue on here, knitting across. And that is how you join your second ball of yarn. Later, I will show you how to weave in the ends. Now that is easy when you're doing flat knitting, because you just want to make sure you have enough yarn to finish the row, and then you can add your new ball of yarn at the end of the row. When you're doing circular knitting, it's a little bit different. However, you just want to start your new ball of yarn in a obscure place. So if you were doing a sweater in the round, you wouldn't start the new yarn in the front or the back. You would try to do it like where a seam would be. People aren't always looking under your arms, and if you add new yarn and then have to weave in the ends there, it's less noticeable. When you're all finished with your project, you need to weave in your ends. You need a darning needle with an eye large enough that you can get the yarn through that you've been working with. Then you just need to weave your yarn in. You'd be surprised. If you stay with the same color, you can pretty much do anything and you don't really see it. You just want to work in as much as you can. What I do want to tell you is that if you're working with wool or any animal fiber that has scales, that helps the yarn stay in place. If you're working with cotton, there is no scales and the yarn might slip out. So what I'm going to say is with cotton, just work in as much as you can so that you don't have a short little end that slips out. What I do along the way is stretch it so that it's not having a real tight look after it is woven in. So that's going to be good enough for this. You're going to trim it really close to the garment. And there we have it. I need to work in my other end and then I'll be finished. All right, and lastly, it's weaving in your ends at the end of the project. So you saw for me, mine was very simple. With this seed stitch and just weaving it in, I could practically just do anything and you don't even see it. However, you do have to be mindful when you're doing that, because say you're using a solid color and stockinette stitch, you'll see it if you're not a little bit more careful. You always want to work in your ends on the back side and be mindful it's not showing in the front. And what you may need to do is mirror some stitches, or if you're working something that has seams, it's always good to weave in on the seams. You'll get the hang of it. You just need to get those ends woven in. And as I mentioned in the close-up video, if you're working with plant fibers that do not have scales, leave a longer tail and weave it in longer, because these nice little wool ones, the scales will grip and you will not have the ends popping out. But I had a scarf that I did in all plant fibers and I had ends popping out everywhere. So just remember, leave a lot of yarn for that and really weave it in. All right, so you see how my scarf worked out. I used the entire ball of yarn. It was kind of yarn roulette. Actually, at one point I thought, I don't know if it's going to be long enough for me for the way I like to wear my scarves. I just kept going and it worked out. It was easy, a whole lot of fun. One thing I have to tell you is there are some mistakes you don't have to fix if you're never going to see them and it doesn't bother you. So somewhere midway through on this scarf, I ended up adding a stitch. And what I did is I held the scarf up and I just wanted to make sure I didn't see something go like this. I didn't. And also with that added stitch, no big deal because you see how it's wrapped and lays over each other, not a problem. So just take every mistake into consideration and then figure it out. So coming soon, I have picked an easy pattern for us to do. You will learn how to read and look at a pattern, knit in the round, knit with 2 strands of yarn, and every step along the way. I will do it with you and I will show you how to do it. We have good things in store. All right, everybody, I hope your first project is going great. Be patient if you have any mistakes. Happy knitting, and thanks for watching.